Hello everyone, welcome back to Old Bluff. As you can see, I've got another good old big one coming on the sawmill here today. At least I tried anyway, but it's just a little bit too much, too heavy for the sawmill to lift, and it's actually too heavy for my skid steer to lift up to the saw bed height. It started out as a 57-inch willow oak, pin oak, some people might call it. We trimmed it down. You saw when I brought it in there, and this side here where we trimmed it down to about 34 inches. But we're just going to have to split this log down the center. That's the only thing that I can come up with to get it to a reasonable weight to get up on the sawmill to trim up. I've got my customer, Andre Miranda's Tree Service. He's the one that brought me the log to slice up. We're going to be making slabs out of it. So he's getting started on ripping it. And he does pretty good. It being such a big log, he had to sharpen the chainsaw several times during this setup. It took a good hour and 20 minutes to get it cut enough where we could break it apart with a skid steer. But he did a good job overall in getting it cut close enough. You'll see later on where it does vary a little bit at the bottom, but we're able to trim it off and save most of the slab that he had there. He's going to be, I think he gets like 12 or 13 slabs out of this, and then some other little trim pieces here and there. So it worked out good for him. So he's getting down here close to the end of it now, so we'll get it to where we can roll it over, and I'm going to take my skid steer and just pop it apart. He's on about the last part of his cut here down low on the log, and I think this is kind of where that chainsaw started wandering a little bit, started pulling over this direction. But overall it worked out pretty good in doing it. Him keeping the chain sharp really helped out, getting a decent cut on it. Didn't line up in a place or two, but we didn't waste a whole lot of good wood on it. And it's just one of those things that you just have to take in consideration working with these big logs. Sometimes you get a little overzealous. We have to come back and make modifications as we need to. So he's getting it on down there now. So we're going to take this and lay it on its side, let Precious split it apart here. You can see it's starting to separate a little bit on its own. So we've got it laid over. Get it where we can. You can see the crotch figure that we're trying to cut into. Some of it splits apart, but he's going to be making tables out of this, so he'll be able to join it back together as he needs to. Certain situations you just have to do a little bit more elbow grease than you want to do or anticipate anyway. Come on, Precious. There she goes. Like splitting a watermelon. So we've got them now where we can get them up on the sawmill. You can see here what this heart looks like, what it's going to look like. You can get a good idea of it. Wasted a little bit of wood on it, but overall, it's as big as this tree is. He's going to get plenty of slabs out of it. Where it does split apart, he's going to be able to join that right back together, I think. So it won't be a big issue for him. So we've got it on the sawmill, got it stood up here. We'll start trimming these sides to get it where it'll fit through so that the sawmill will pass over it. And that's one thing about the sawmill, when you've got 34.5 inches. I've got the LT50. I've got 34.5 inches between the saw blade guides, but what you have between the backstops and that outermost blade guide is what you can actually run. And that wound up being a good bit less than what I had anticipated. It wound up being 31 3/4. You could probably squeeze 32 inches through, but I don't like to push it that close myself because there's always something in the way. See how I handle that delicately there. This is what some of that heart grain's going to look like. Real pretty wood. Turned out good for them. The slabs look really good. So now I've had to come back and trim the other side up, just kind of even it up, and I'm going to get it down to 32 inches. That way I know I've got enough to pass through between the backstops and the saw blade guide there. See, I had to kind of get up on one knee just to see the back side of it there. Now I know this is a long video, but if you've got a bandsaw mill and you're running it, there's some good educational features in this one. At least some of the pitfalls that you'll run into when you start getting close to the max size on the machine. They're really hard to flip up, rotate around. You have to be careful. I used a 4x4, an oak 4x4 that I had, just to make sure that this big slab here didn't flip over off the sawmill and into my building. So you just have to watch what you're doing and be careful. Use different things to your advantage. I had to use precious, pry bar, the lift arms, the chain turner, and the hydraulic lift, the clamp there. Just everything together. It took quite a while. It took most of the day. I think I wound up with about 6 hours in cutting this up. I just run into all kind of stuff. Customers bring me logs and need them cut up. You know, I try and work with everybody when I can, but you know, some of this stuff is tough. But I just wanted to, I guess, have the experience in doing it, so I thought I'd do a video on it and share this experience with you. So if you, like I say, if you've got a bandsaw mill and you got some big logs, you got limitations, so you got to check it. And checking from those backstops to the inside of that outermost blade guide, that's probably one of the most important things, just to know that you're going to have enough room to pass through. Having a good machine for lifting these logs, old Precious there, she'll grab something and just go with it, but you know, you only have certain capacity on the machine. You don't want to strain the cylinder seals on those lift arms or anything else, obviously, but you know, it's just an opportunity to get some good slabs out of it. So I got a little bit of wood out of this and helped the customer out. Andre's a good guy. I'm just checking just to make sure what I've got. I'm checking it off the frame there, and I'm allowing for the difference in those backstops. I think we've got it set where we need it. But I'll trim this, come down. Now you'll see here in a minute, there's my 4x4. I'm putting it back in place, so I'm not satisfied. I'm going to trim again. So I'll have to stand this log back up and take a little bit more off the top, just to get it where it'll pass through the machine. I don't know if I show all this on there or not. I think I have to wind up getting Precious to help me get it tilted back up. These big logs are hard to deal with sometimes. And this was only like 7.5 feet long, so it spanned across the two backstops. But it being such an odd shape, so heavy, it was just hard to deal with. So I used that 4x4 as just a secondary backstop, just to make sure that I wasn't going to roll that thing over into the side of my building. Lord, if it fell in between the building and the sawmill, I'll probably never get it out of there. So here I've got it set where I'm going to take off enough, pretty good bit, I think a couple of inches to get it down. Yes, 2.5, 3 inches looks like, just to get it down close enough so it'll go through the saw head. And this is a LT50 wide, so I don't know what they had originally. The regular machines, I guess it's around 30 inches. I'm not really sure, but 32 is the max from the backstops out, so you got to remember that. It cost me a little bit of extra work because I would have cut it previously to fit through there, but I was kind of going off 34.5 inches is what it measures in between the two rollers, so I was going to cut it 34, and go with it. But I decided to just go on and trim this thing down where it'll pass right through there. I wasn't able to clamp it off real good. And this thing being such a big log, anyway, it wasn't going anywhere once I got it set up on the sawmill. So much weight to it. I had to take off several of the slabs. I think I could only cut 2, leaving them on top before I could pass through again. I had to take some of those slabs off just to have enough room, because the sawmill head wanted to hit. The higher they go up, I think the little fastener for the dust cover on this idler side was hitting on the edge of the log. You'll see that coming up. I also bent the little metal shroud that goes around the debarker. I didn't know I did it. I was out cleaning up, running some other logs the other day, and noticed it bent. Didn't think much about it and just straightened it out. But then I started editing this video and saw exactly when I did it, and I'll point that out in a little bit. So I got Precious to grab that little piece there and flip it off to the side. We'll make him something out of that, so nothing's going to waste. This is where the chainsaw deviated a little bit at the bottom, so I'm going to try and clean this up and leave that in the last slab once I start cutting his slabs. I think it'll work out pretty good, so he'll have the majority of that section still good instead of wasting any wood. It'll be a little bit shorter than 7.5 feet, but I don't think that'll matter to him, because he can make a couple of end tables or just anything out of it. He's not chiseled in stone exactly what he's going to do, giving some to his family members, whatever. But he's got a lot of good wood to work with. Some of it's going to be real pretty once he does his joinery work and gets it all finished out. It'll turn out pretty good for him. I'm going to try and con him out of 1 or 2 pieces if he will. I don't know. He's a good guy. I enjoy working with Andre. He's a hard worker. Let's see what we got here. Thought I'd stop and show what this looks like. I can tell I'm going to have to change the blade. See all that chatter right there. It did okay for the most part, but I think we need to put another one on, because this one's going to be tough to cut. That crotch figure comes all the way through this tree. It'll probably separate in a place or two, but he's going to bond everything together from the underside, probably with runners or something we talked about. Willow oak. Here you can see what I cut off the bottom side of the log, just to try and get rid of this bad section where his chainsaw wandered out into it. I've left this about 4 inches to get it log squared up on the bottom. I'm gonna come back and resaw this to get it cut. So now I've got this flipped over and ready to cut. And what the customer's wanting is 2 1/4 inch slabs out of this. One thing too I wanted to mention, this saw is advertised, it's got 34 inches from this inner guide all the way out to the outside blade guide here. It'll do about 34.5 if you really push it, but what I found out, it'll only cut 32 inches off of the backstops. Once you raise them up and butt your log to it, you can only cut 30. It'll go to 33, I believe, 33 1/4, but 32 is where I'm comfortable. I don't like to get it real tight in here because I can't see it that good, especially on a big log like this. But now I've got this set up, so now I'm going to go to the control panel and set up my pattern cut. Since we're going to do 2 1/4 inches, I'm just going to go to it. Actually, I got the laser on, so I'll bring the saw head down to a comfortable distance so I can see the laser on the log. I'm gonna raise on back up. Now come in, set the pattern cut for 2 1/8. And I always set these like the 1, I'll have programmed at 1, 1 1/8, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 1 5/8, whatever I'm doing. Same way with 2, 3, and 4s. So I'll go into the 2. Let's see what we got. Got 2 inches, 2 1/8, now 2 1/4. So we've got that set up now. So I'll just run the machine down until I'm comfortable with what I'm cutting. That's not cutting quite enough off, so I'm gonna come down one more increment of 2 1/8, 2 1/4. So that's cutting right across that square edge there, so I think that'll be good. So I'm gonna start right there. So you remember I squared it on the bottom and it still had a bad section in it from the chainsaw, but that'll leave that section and it should take out the rest of that bad chainsaw cut that was left in the log. So let's get going on this thing and get it sliced up. Now I wound up using 3 saw blades on this log to get everything cut. I started off with a blade that I had been using, cut 1 or 2 logs, and just kind of squared everything off as good as I could. Once I start cutting the slabs, from each section I put a new blade on. I held those other blades back, and I'll use them to cut some more of my cabin logs, so I'll get the most I can out of all of them. So I made that cut. Now I'm coming down, I'll get the first good slab out of that. Now I will say too that I normally try and keep my engine percentage load meter around 30-35%, but you get into these big oak logs, you can't run through without cranking it up a little bit. So I wound up between 40 and 48% on that percentage load meter, but I kept good tension, lubrication, and always had a good blade on it. So that made a big difference in it, and you'll see some of these slabs. It turned out pretty good. You get a little bit of chatter going in. I always slow down when I enter the log. That way I don't just dive into it and get a lot of chatter or waviness right there at the lead edge, and that helps out a little bit. So you just gotta plow through it as good as you can, but you can't, overdo it in trying to cut these big, wide, hard pieces, because it'll get wavy with you, especially at knots, things like that. Here you can see what we've got. This is the first good cut on the slab. He's gonna come back and put live edges back on here, dress things up. It's really pretty grain in this wood. Looks like it might be some spalting around some of these limb areas. It's really pretty. This tree's only been down a couple of months, so it's ought to be in good shape to work with. It's being 2 1/4 thick. I told my customer he needs to build his tables in close proximity to where he's going to put it, because these rascals are going to be heavy. But he's planning on doing some epoxy things, so he'll fill all these areas here, and it'll probably break apart when we get on down to the bottom. As you can see that the limbs grew together on the back side, the bottom side of this log. You could really tell it. So he'll probably have to do a little joinery work. But even this section here, even having the bark on, I really like that. It's a different look to it. Put some epoxy on it and level it out, keeping some of this live edge here would really look good. I just like the rustic stuff. Here you can see where his chainsaw got over into the side of this, but I've got it figured when I made the first cut, the 2 1/4 is going to take this out in this area right here, so he'll have the majority of it on this side still to work with. So that'll take that out. So let's get to finishing the cut. One thing about cutting these big wide logs like this, making slabs out of them, you don't wind up with the original live edge on it, and I kind of like that. But you can come back. I've got grinders, little side grinders, carving discs that go on a 4 1/2 inch side grinder. You can put a live edge back on it just in no time, really. Stuff that I've made, I'll whittle it down around the edges, sand it off, and then come back and stain it with a light color like a driftwood stain just around that outside edge, and it really makes it look like it's original live edge. You know, make it a little bit wavy and sand it back in place too, around your edges. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It just makes it stand out a little bit more if you're doing the big slab cuts. And you'll see here in a minute, I talked about it earlier, I have to take slabs off to keep from hitting things. If I drop down with 3 in the stack, you'll see where I hit that guard for my debarker there. It's got the little shroud around it. I think it's on this next pass when I drop it down. It's just, and I didn't notice it, it's just inside that edge of the outside edge there on the slab. So next time that I drop it down, it hits it and bends that little arm up a little bit. It's no problem to fix. But I didn't notice it when I did it. I noticed it after I cleaned sawmill up. Noticed it bent. Thought, oh, how'd I do that? So I just straightened it out with a little crescent wrench. But you'll see it coming up here, right here where I dropped down. Bam, got it. And I didn't even notice it. Just that little 1-inch or 7/8 inch strap that holds that shroud on there. It bent it up. You'll see it when it gets down to this end, how it's cocked up a little bit. So I had to straighten that rascal out and get it back where it needed to be. But all this turned out pretty good. It took the better part of a day to cut these 2 half slabs up, but it worked out good for the customer. I think he's going to get a lot of good wood. See where I bent that up? Anyway, we got it fixed. Well, we got the other log positioned up on the sawmill. Got pressure to set it up there, and we got it kicked up. You can see where I'm going to be cutting through. It's at about 35 inches above the bed rails right now. So I've got to trim a little bit off this end, then roll it over, cut the other side. Then I'll square up the face back over here. Let me move her. You can see this side of the log here where it's still in rough shape. So I've got to get it where I can pass over it, trim it up. Shouldn't take too awful much. All right, let's see what we can do with it. You'll see coming up, I catch it before I get up there too close where it's going to pass through. Look like it's going to hit the little tightening device on the dust cover. Well, as I got up to the log, I could see that the clamp here for the dust cover on the pulley guard is not going to clear. You see that right there? Looks like the guides will clear by about 1/2 inch, but that's not going to clear. So I can't raise up anymore. I can a little bit. I'm almost to the max. I've got about another 3/4 of an inch. I'll raise that up and see. So what I was able to do here is open up the clamp a little bit, put these 1-inch spacers in behind the back dogs here, and clamp it back off. So I think that's got it. So we look down through here now, and I think that we're gonna clear that little housing bracket that's on there. We'll see as I get going with it. You can see here I'm keeping a close eye on that fastener that there by the edge of the log, just to make sure it'll pass. I mean, it was close. I had like 1/8 of an inch space in between there. I just kept up with it as I was going down through there. After I made that last cut there, I decided to take a little lunch break. Forgot to turn my camera back on. Anyway, I wanted to show this, just wrestling with this piece. So I just kept this at regular speed so you can see what goes on with some of these bigger things. And it's a gut-wrenching event too. You have to watch those backstops. You can see I put my 4x4 in place there, and I used the chain turner, the clamp dog. I wind up having to get Precious in here to help lift this thing up so I can trim that other side, this top section here that you see, get it to the right dimension so that the sawmill will pass over it. You just have to watch every little detail of it. That's the importance of me sharing this video with you guys. I know it's a long video, but I just wanted you to see some of the stuff that's involved when you get into some of these bigger logs, especially one that's only 7 feet. But I like to stay in that 10 to 16 foot range. Of course, with these big logs like that, you couldn't lift anything like that, but even split like this, 7.5 foot pieces, tough to handle. I mean, you're probably still looking at close to 2,500 pounds with this thing. You can imagine if that thing got free and rolled over there against my building, my building probably flop out sideways in the yard out there. I don't know. But I had a good 4x4 stuck in there, and that gave me a little bit more peace of mind. But you can see what's involved with it. You really got to be careful. I tried to take it slow, work with it, lift it up, get it where I thought it was going to be able to use its own weight to roll in. It's just a gut-wrenching event. But between Precious and all the hydraulics on the mill, we managed to finagle it in there. And I can't say enough about the Woodmizer mill. It got good hydraulics, everything about it. I know I've done a lot of modifications, but that's just my own little signature putting on it to help things out, make life a little bit easier for me. But you get into some of these big logs, buddy, you're just pushing everything. Finding out that I couldn't cut the full 34 inches was a big letdown, because I was hoping that I could do that. But regardless, he got some good slabs. We got him taken care of. I think he's going to make some good looking pieces of furniture or whatever with it. I've just about got it up there where I can use that chain turner now to finagle it across there. But I had to keep up with those backstops back there. The back of the log would get hung up on it. It was one thing after another. But everything working together, you just had to kind of bide your time and get it in the right spot. So we got it set up there now so I can drop everything down, and hopefully its own weight will set it into place. One thing too that I found out, when I lift a log up, just any old log with the log lift, I'll use that chain turner to help pull the log on up towards the clamp dogs at the back of the machine. And that's one thing I did with these bigger logs here. I used the teeth on that chain turner to pull that big log up against the backstops, and it works out good. Just little things like that help you, especially in handling these big logs, because it's so dangerous, especially one man working on it. So you really got to be careful with what you do. We're getting it close to where it needs to be. It looks like it's still hung up a little bit on that back clamp dog there. We'll get it finagled into place, make this last cut, then lay it down and start cutting the slabs off of it. These big trees like this, you just really have to be careful with it. I'd scratch my head and back up and take a look at this, take a look at that, just trying to make sure I didn't mess something up. But, you know, like I say, these sawmills, these Woodmizer sawmills, they've really got some good hydraulics on them, and they've thought it out. You know, they've been doing it for a long time, and I can't say enough about it. That's why I bought one of them. Their customer service, I use the office here in Noonan, Georgia. I'm down in northwest Georgia, but they have helped me dozens of times. Technical information, questions about the machine, parts, everything with customer service with Woodmizer has been exceptional. So now I got to get that 4x4 out of the way. I don't want to have to cut it into a bunch of small sections. I think I use that chain turner to just pull that up just enough to get it out of there. There we go. I'll get it out of the way, and then I can clamp it off, clean up that top edge there, and then lay it back down again. Like I say, this took the better part of the day to do, but you know, I was just taking my time with it, making sure I didn't mess anything up, get the best wood I could out of it. Just trying to help the customer out. But I enjoyed doing it. It's something different rather than just cutting lumber. It is a little bit to take on, but if you're careful about it, you usually make your way through it. If I'd have got to a point to give up, I'd have definitely gave up, but I just never got to that point. I just wanted to share this video and show everybody what's involved when you get to the machine limits. You really have to be careful with what you're doing. Take your time and think about it. And now I'm making that last cut to get it down to where the saw head will pass over it comfortably to cut the slabs out of it. You know, roll it down and take care of all that. You can see that split across that log there down the length of it. That's where those limbs had grown together. That's where we'll get some separation as we start cutting the slabs out of it. I cut off a little bit of that chainsaw cut at the top. You can see how it wandered down, left that crooked cut. So we got rid of a little bit of that where he trimmed the side. Andre had to come back 2 times, I believe it was. We had to trim that 57-inch log down to 34, so I thought that I could handle it. But then, like I showed the entry of the video, it was just too heavy for the skid steer and those lift arms. I just couldn't get it up on the mill. That's why we had to come back and just split it. There was no questions about it. It was just they couldn't handle it. But Andre hung in there. This has gone on for several weeks, probably a month. I'd call him and tell him the bad news, and he'd make arrangements to come back, trim it a little bit more until finally we split it. But it all worked out pretty good in the end. I think he's going to get some good slabs out of it. Now I'm trying to get this thing rolled down so that I can clean up that top edge. And we've got it positioned where I like it, so I had to come back and clean this off. You can see there's a good bit of taper on that top, so I just slice off little pieces, just getting it out of the way. Didn't want to cut too much off. You get down and take too big of a bite, it still wants to hit on the inside of the outer section of the saw head there. I only had like 3/4 of an inch, so I tried to play it safe and cutting that. So we'll get all those little pieces off, just take little slivers off and get rid of all this taper that's on there. This that you see there is where that chainsaw wandered a little bit into this section. I'll get it down so far, then I'll cut him a slab out of it so that it won't waste a whole lot of it. He'll have that to work with and do a little something as he builds his furniture or whatever. I think I'll probably, remember if I took off, I think I'm making him a slab out of this one. Yeah, I am. So he'll have this one to work with. I think it splits in the center. I believe this is the one that splits when I pull it off there. But he'll be able to work with it, join it back together. He's got a good bit of work to do on it. At least he can save the wood. He's got different relatives he's going to give sections of it to. Now we're getting it down to that last cut. Get it out of there, and then we'll flip it over. Start cutting his 2 1/4 inch slabs out of it. Overall, though, this tree cut good. Be as big as it is, it wasn't near as hard as I thought it might be. Going through at 45–48% on the percentage meter is not bad. You know, like I said, though, I kept a good sharp blade on with good lubrication and good tension. Made sure of that. And that made it a lot easier and for the sawmill to pass through it. So I'll rock this thing up and then slide that slab off We'll get ready to flip this thing over, make some more cuts on the other side. That's where it separated at that limb section where they grew together. That's actually bark between those sections. Just a little bit of bark. I don't know if something forced it together or what the situation was, but it wouldn't just, it was bark on both sides. There's where it separated. Now I'll crawl this big rascal up, get it flipped over where I can start cutting the slabs off of it. You can see there on that far side it's going to taper a good bit towards the end of it, but he'll still get a good bit of slabs out of it overall. I think this is where I have to do all the pushing and prying and finagling. You can see I'm coming back to my oak 4x4 there to get it wedged in place. I just don't want to tear my building down. But it's all good with the hydraulics on the machine. I mean, if you take it easy, you can handle a big piece, but you just really have to watch what you're doing. It's tedious. It takes time. I can't tell you how many times I walked around this sawmill looking at this, looking at that, pushing this and that, just trying to make it work. But that's what it takes sometimes. You get into these odd shaped logs, it's just tough. Having that big railroad pry bar, a little bit of back work, get it where it's held in there enough where I can get it tilted up in the right position. I wound up having to get Precious back in to just tilt the log upright enough so I could get a hold of it to flip it over. I did that, got things going again, got it flipped over, but looked over at my camera and noticed that it had quit. The batteries didn't die. I don't know what happened. It just quit, and I just happened to look at it, noticed it wasn't on for some reason. I don't even know how long it was off, to be honest, but I apologize for that. So we had to pick it up and go from where I found out that it had turned off. One of those things. You just run into technical difficulties, I guess is the word for it. By the time I got it figured out, we had it flipped over and ready to start cutting slabs off of it. So here I am lined up on it. So I set my AccuSet back up to the pattern cut. Got it up to where I'm comfortable cutting that first little bit off. Then it'll be slabbed from there on down. Get it all cut up out the door. This one probably turned out, this half log turned out better than the first one. The first one had some good features to it, but I believe this one overall turned out better. You can see I turned the laser on there just to check it, see what the drop looked like. I tell you, if you're running a sawmill and you don't have a laser, you need to do yourself a favor and just spend $100 and put one on. It's one of the better things. I like my ride-along seat, but that laser has been a big help. I just keep on finding ways to use it. Just check myself, check the log, make sure I'm not going to hit anything. It's just one thing after another. But it really makes a big difference. And having that green light really shows up good, even with some sunlight coming in that 10x14 door there on the end of the building. I can still see it against that metal post. I'll get some of that trash off there, and I'll save him this first cut here because there's still a little bit of good wood left in it. He can make an end table or something out of it. He'll figure out something to do with it anyway. I'm going to lay it down, and you'll see this chain turner come up right there, and I snugged that log up against the backstops and then dropped them down. I'll do that several times with it. That chain turner comes in handy for doing that. That one tooth coming around, it reaches out just far enough so that the maximum log width, it'll catch it. It worked out good just to pull the log up. I didn't clamp these off because they're so heavy they're not going anywhere anyway, but It all worked out pretty good. Square and good dimensions all the way around on it. Of course, these ends, I had coated all the ends before I started cutting the log, so we've got that taken care of. I just use Elmer's glue on these ends. I buy school glue. Old timer taught me that. I'll take a couple of gallons of it, mix a quart of water with it. I've only got like $8 and 2 gallons. It's a lot cheaper than the anchor seal. And all you're doing is just slowing the moisture from leaving the end. You don't have to stop it. You just slow it down to where it's close to the same as what's coming out of the middle, and you'll be alright with it. Keep from having a lot of checking going on anyway. Well, I appreciate you guys watching the video. If you've watched it this far, I hope you've learned a little bit from it, from my mistakes. You can see that chain turner, I'm snugging that log up one more time. As I pass through, it wants to kick one way or another, not having those dogs up. I probably should have had the dogs up just a little bit. I've got some of them off there I'm working on. I don't know if this is the last cut. Now it looks like I got one more after this, and that'll have this log cut up. I enjoyed doing it. He's got a lot of good wood out of it. I'll show you some of these slabs when we get to it here. But he's got a lot to work with. But he's going to have to build it close to where he's going to install it, because it's going to be heavy. I don't know what he's going to do for supporting it. He's probably got something in mind. I think some metal stands would look good. That way you could move your stands and set these tops on it and just screw it down. I think that would look good. I'd appreciate if you guys would give us a thumbs up. Maybe think about subscribing. Definitely hit the notification bell, because I never know when I'm going to put another video out. And I hope you got a little something out of the video. That's what I put them out for, try and help folks so that you'll maybe not make the mistakes that I've made along the way. But I enjoy, I guess there's not real mistakes made, it's just lessons learned. I guess I can say I've had a lot of lessons in life, because I've made a lot of mistakes. But as long as you work your way through it, you'll be alright. Just keep on moving forward. That's about all you can do with it. But I'm glad to get this one cut up and out of the way, because I got a lot more cabin logs to finish cutting, some long ones. Well, here's what we wound up with. I think it looks pretty good. This is a second to last slab coming off. It's real close to the heart of the tree. That's why I'm getting that dark color in there. It's real pretty. This is the second. That other was the third to last, but this is the second. It's got a split. Starts right here and goes down that side like several of these other slabs. See? You can see there is a little chatter cut into these slabs right here at the end. It didn't start until about the third to the last. Overall, I think it's pretty good. Got him some good wood to work with. Anyway, he'll be able to sand that. I don't know if he's going to plane it or not. I believe he could sand most of this out, get it down to where it's workable for him for what he's going to do. He's wanting to keep everything live edge anyway, so he's got a good bit of work to do on it. This is the first willow oak of this size that I've cut. I've cut several others, none that quite this size. It really turned out good. I'm proud to give him such good wood to work with. So just remember, you've only got, on this LT50, you've only got 32 inches from the backstops out to the outside blade guide roller bracket to work with before you hit your material on it. So just remember that. I hope this has helped you guys. Till next video, take care and be safe.